Hello and welcome. My name is Josh Singh. I'm your host of the Racial Healing Podcast. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I started this podcast because I had to do something. I struggled for a long time to figure out what to do about racism. I've always been an ally. I've done my own work around overcoming my own pain and trauma around racism. And I've always known that that is not really enough. So I started this podcast for people to share their stories, to be heard, and for you, the listener, to witness those stories. And my hope is that we can all heal our hearts and our souls from listening and being part of this podcast together. So thank you for being here. Please consider subscribing, and I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Well, welcome. Raju, Nagarajan, welcome to the Racial Healing Podcast. So wonderful to have you. We have our youngest interviewee ever on the camera today. And who do we have with you, Raju?
This is my 1 month plus a few days old, Irene Roth Nagarajan. She was born on July 8th, 2020.
Wow.
The great time of COVID.
Wow, she's a COVID baby.
No, not exactly, but yes.
Well, she wasn't produced during COVID, but she was birthed during COVID.
Correct.
Yes. All right. Beautiful.
Clarification there.
All right. Wonderful. Well, it's so wonderful to have you on the podcast today, and I'm glad we get a chance to talk here. So, let's just jump right in. My first question for you, Raju, is how would you describe your identity?
It's a great question, Josh. My identity, how I feel, is I am a very happy-spirited person. Not spiritual, but very spirited person. Very upbeat. I feel like I'm easygoing. I'm easygoing as in I easily go with the flow of life. I feel very fortunate. I've recently used the word blessed lately. My wife and her family are very religious, so I've kind of gotten a little bit part of that, but just using the word blessed. I have a great life that I'm living right now. Privileged is a good word to use, but on the aspect of being privileged, I feel like I've carved that path for myself too. I'm a happy-go-lucky person. Is who my identity is.
Well, privilege,
male and father.
Privilege is a commonly used word these days. And what do you mean when you say privileged?
When I say privileged, I feel as though for reasons to be, I'm privileged with a good nest egg of money. I'm privileged with having the very basic needs, food, shelter, water. I feel privileged at the aspect of I have a job, and I have money, and I have health insurance. This one's got health insurance via me, so that makes me feel privileged. And I feel privileged really as an aspect of I don't feel worried to do certain things. But at the same time, I do feel worried to do certain things too. Every aspect of everyone's life, when you walk around, you may look over your shoulder, you may not look over your shoulder. But as a free-spirited person, I don't tend to look over my shoulder as much, so to say.
When you say you feel free to walk around without looking over your shoulder, reading into that, I imagine you're referring to people who have to be afraid to just be out and about?
Yes. I would say some people do look over their shoulder from time to time. No, I'm saying that I don't do that. It depends on where I'm at. There's been times where I felt not safe. For sure. So,
can you share a little bit about when you felt not safe?
1 second. Sorry.
Go ahead.
We're going to have Mama take. Say bye, everyone.
Thanks, Danny.
Say that again.
You said that there's times where you felt not safe. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm a NASCAR fan, and NASCAR, by the roots of it itself, is from the backwoods of the southern states. Southern states to most people means redneck, which also means white Republican gun ho people. I know that's a very strong statement, but Confederate flags do run high in the NASCAR community, which, ironically, I like seeing because that's part of NASCAR. It's almost weird not seeing them at tracks, especially now since they have discontinued allowing them to have them. There was one incident when I went down on my way from Indianapolis to Florida, driving down to visit my parents, and I swung by the Talladega Super Speedway, which is in Alabama, and not even thinking about it. I was so happy to see that Super Speedway and everything, but as I was driving through, and I was safe. I mean, it was during the day and everything, but it just little hairs in the back of my neck kind of stood up, and I was just like, oh, maybe I really hope my car does not break down in the backwoods, so to say, even though it was off the highway, backwoods of Alabama.
Wow.
Not what I felt like a safest place.
Right.
Say that again?
I wonder what was happening in your body that you knew something wasn't safe there.
I was not a Caucasian white male.
So you just have that sense, there's something psychic or physiological that you were feeling that you knew not safe here.
Yes, I felt safe in my car, but I did not feel safe as if my car was to break down. Even further and further in the day, but as a whole, I didn't feel safe by myself if the car broke down.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that story. So before we get any further, I'd like to just say how we know each other. Raju and I are brothers-in-law, and so that little girl that we were seeing is my niece, Isla. So I would love for you to share, Raju, your story, your family story. Would you be willing to share some of that here?
Absolutely, yes.
Why don't you just start from as far back as you'd like to go?
Well, the story all begins in May 11th, 1977, when I was born in India. The fact of May 11th is not my true birth date, actually. May 11th is the date that my biological father took me and my two biological sisters to an orphanage. And it's called Balamandir. It's in Chennai, India. And we, three of us, grew up there till I was at the age of almost 3 years old. And on February 10th of 1980, I was adopted and flew halfway around the world to come to America and be with a family, the Nagarajans, leaving my biological sisters behind, but not leaving them behind. I did not have any say in that. But that's where it all started back in 1977 and 1980. Being adopted, being an orphan, and then having a reboot, so to say, another life, so to say, another chance. Being adopted is something that I love telling people. It's an amazing life that I've led so far. And that's just the very beginning. Shall I continue?
Yeah, please, of course.
From that point on, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, the five of us, in the Nagarajan family. Went to elementary school, middle school, high school in Indianapolis. All three of us kids did. Throughout that time, at the same time, when we were growing up, Ramakrishna, my father, he and my mom tried to adopt my other two siblings, my biological siblings in India, for reasons it would never happen. sad, but down the road, as time would have it, it worked itself out beautifully well. Growing up, I was just, I went to what's called Washington Township, middle to upper class, mostly Caucasian, white class of people. But the high school that I went to seemed very diverse, actually. It had a mixture of almost every country in it. It was I felt very privileged to be in that school. It opened up a lot of my eyes to the world. But also my family dynamics. My mother is from Alice. My mother is from South Bend, Indiana. My father is from Chennai, India, and that's where that's how that I came about. So I literally had best of both worlds. Sometimes on our summer vacations, we would go to India and visit his family, my family in Chennai. And then other summers we'd go to South Bend and visit my mom's family. So you have Indiana and India wrapped around. And it's just amazing the world that I've seen just by being adopted. Had I not been adopted, obviously, who knows what would have happened. But just being adopted into this family that my Rivi and Thar are not biologically related to me, but skin tone wise, we all look the same. Actually, of course, they're a lot taller than I am. But skin tone wise, we look relatively the same, actually.
So I sort of know the answer to this question, but I'm very interested to hear you answer. Does your family talk about race very much?
No, we actually really don't.
Before you answer, you didn't actually say the race of your mom. Maybe you felt it was implied, but could you say that as well?
Oh, yeah, she is Caucasian. She's white American, born, raised South Bend, Indiana. My father's Indian. He's born, raised from India. So we have a mixture of them.
Right.
A mixture.
And so you're saying the family doesn't really talk about race.
Growing up, I don't really recall talking much about race. We were integrated. My father he was one of the first Indians from India to be in Indianapolis. He set the grounds for welcoming other Indians. He helped build a Indian community center, actually, and that just opened up the network from that point on. And that was back in the early '80s. So I mean, it was really important for him to find a home for other Indians to go to and feel as if they're almost at home or feeling relaxed. Excuse me. But yeah, it's just, I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, being part of the family now, my experience isn't that race isn't talked about, but certainly being Indian is talked about, and Indian food and culture and customs and those kinds of things are just integrated into family life. It's just it is just part of the family life. It's not talked about as a thing. So yeah. And then tell me about the family you're in now. Your family that you created.
The family that I am in now, my wife Danielle, she is Caucasian, and almost reliving the whole thing from my parents, actually. I'm Indian. I was born in India, came here, and married a white female. She has 2 kids from her previous marriage, who are both her kids are white, and now we have a baby that's mixed, half and half, half Indian, half white. She and I don't know what else to say except for she's amazing. And she is from a small town, Bluffton, Indiana. And I'm from Indianapolis, more so to say. So it was city boy and country girl met together 2016, I think it's 2016, it's all blurred together.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, we have both at the ages of 43, we have a newborn.
Incredible. And
Amazing.
And I know, in the times leading up to COVID and before Danny became pregnant, you all were thinking about going to India together. Can you share a little bit about that?
Say that again.
I said, can you share a little bit about that and sort of, what the excitement and also the concerns about going to India and some of those thoughts?
Well, everybody has their own way of living. Danny likes to live in the cold, like temperature-wise. India doesn't really suit well for coldness, especially southern India.
No, southern India is hot, hotter, and hottest. Is basically
exactly hottest. I'm a flight attendant, so and Danielle is short. I call her Danny. We were considering going and using my flight benefits to go to India. We talked about it and tried to figure out, the best time to go. Part of the reason why we didn't end up going was because I did not feel secure enough within my own self to guide her, not to get there, but to guide her through India. I like having more people, and I love having family. So my family has been to India several times throughout our lifetimes. So having them to help guide me and her made me feel much more comfortable. That's the reason why we really didn't go. I would have loved to, and I still am anxious, and we are still going to do it. It's just my fears of me getting over my fears of not being able to do things.
What?
I need my family.
Yeah, if you're willing to share a little bit, you said like the insecurity of being in India. What are you referring to there?
For whatever reason, for a lot of my life, I've been a follower versus a leader. I don't know if that was integrated as being because I'm the baby of three, with my brother and my sister, inadvertently. When you're the baby, you're given a lot and helped out a lot, pushed through. Instead of, my brother, he helps pull and lead us and guide us. And so does my sister. They both do that. So being literally the baby, I'm not going to lead my brother and my sister, so to say. I'm going to follow like the little duckling behind and follow their footsteps. I don't know if that translated and pushed into my adulthood. It seems to have done that. But time and time again, I have seen myself do that. I've never gone to India. I've never been in India by myself without one form of family member of my 5 family members with me. Now, I flew to India once by myself, twice by myself, but that was fine. I wasn't worried about that. It was actually being in India.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I grew up here and my dad's from India. It's a hard place to navigate, whether with family or not with family. I mean, not being with family, it's just hard to get around and go from one place to the next and, not get taken for a ride by somebody. And then with family, it's complicated too, in order to know, how much to visit, where to set boundaries, even just like negotiating food and time and space and, the comfort, the things I'm comfortable with. For example, my cousin lives in the north, and we were there when it was cold. So in the winter, actually in Delhi, it gets quite cold and they have no heat. And it was so cold. It was like unbearably cold. And we wanted a space heater. And there is this angst about, should we ask for the space heater? Is that okay? I really wanted it. It was very cold. And at the same time, I felt like a whiny American, not being able to be uncomfortable. So I'm sympathetic towards that feeling of that insecurity of not knowing how to do it.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself here in the States more or less comfortable with other Indian people as opposed to, say, non-Indians?
That's a good question. Ever since my father passed away in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
I have inadvertently not been around hardly any Indians actually. So to answer that question from 2009 to present, there is no answer. Not that I wouldn't be comfortable around Indians, but I do just recollected something. One of my neighbors across the street, directly across the street, he is Indian. Same dynamic. Actually, he's married to a Caucasian lady, and I get along with him great. He's kind of like my brother. So, but as past him, I have hung out with two other Indians. It was just different. It seemed different. It's hard to talk about India when I don't know what's going on in India, and I don't follow either the religion or the everyday aspects of India. But I like to talk as if I know what's going on. So to answer the question, prior to my dad's, I felt like I knew a lot about India, and it was very easy to talk to Indians. More specifically, people that were my age, because they understood. They understood what it was like growing up in the United States. Even if they were born in the United States, second generation, born in the States. Or for them, probably first generation, first generation. But, and their parents, had come over for jobs, and I felt very close, connected to them. They were extended family. They were my family members. As time went on, it decreased in the population of the amount of people, Indians that I were in contact with, only coming down to 3 ever since 2009. And there again, I felt very close, but I don't have anything to relate to yet. I feel like, other than, I was born in India. That's about it.
Yeah, so you're saying it's different. Is that a contrast with like interacting with, say, white people, where there's not that extra like, okay, we have this thing in common. How do we talk about it or not talk about it?
It's not good or bad. It's not hard or impossible or easy. It's just I adjust to who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to an Indian versus a white person, then I'll adjust to how I'm talking to them. Sometimes, as in, what I'm trying to relate to them, as in, this kind of food or this kind of culture or this kind of lifestyle, and I understand what they're saying. But so it's not easier or harder. It's just I adjust myself to them.
Gotcha. So you in the beginning shared a bit about that experience in Alabama when the hairs were standing up on the back of your neck. I was wondering, do you think that you've been the target of racism very often in your life?
Not very often, but there's a very good story that I would love to share. And this is, let me give a moment because it still scares me to death, actually. September 11th, 2001 is obviously a huge date for every single buddy that was living in America at the time. Can't be more so said one versus the other, but the aftermath that happened from that, the main targeted people were of brown skin. Almost didn't matter where they were from. It was just brown skin.
Right.
And even to narrow the spectrum down even more so, brown toned males that had goatees too. In my time in life, at that time, I was a brown skinned male with a goatee, right around that era. right around that time frame. And I think it was the next day, September 12th or 13th, I was driving on the street, going to an interstate in very populated suburb just outside of Indianapolis called Fishers. And on my way to work, I come up to a red light and a pickup truck diagonal to my right. The guy, we were all stopped at the red light, nothing, significant about that. The driver of the pickup truck looked back, happened to see me, and then everything happened in slow motion from that point on. I could see him look back at me, and it just dawned on me what had happened and what he did. He gave me I'm going to kill you, cut throat signal to me and pointed right at me. And yeah, I about fell apart emotionally, physically. Like I was shaking, like I actually am right now talking about it. But it was, I was driving. I knew I had to continue driving. But I was, I was scared, very much so.
Yeah.
To add on to the story, and I wish I couldn't script this. I mean, it's one that you couldn't script. I apologize for it. But the pickup truck itself had a backsplash, like a lot of pickup trucks do on the windows of the backsplash. It was a Confederate flag. And then he had a double gun rack with it. And to top it off, his exhaust pipe was sticking out up top versus out on the side like normal, or in the back like most pickup truck do. Which, to me, in general, not looking at it at the time prior to that, didn't really, it was just another redneck to me. It was just something I didn't mind. I really didn't mind. It was, blue collar, redneck type person. But on that specific date, in that specific year in time, it meant a lot because all of a sudden I felt targeted and like my life was threatened at that time. So yeah, that one moment in time was where I was sitting in the car shaking. I think I was crying on my way to work, saying to myself, I wish I was back in India right now. I wish I was in India. I would be a lot safer there. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really terrifying. I'm sorry that happened to you. And it's like really made to feel like you're an other, like you don't belong just because of the color of your skin.
And if I may add,
Please.
From that date since, I've never worn a goatee again. It took me a long time to get my beard back even, but I've never worn a goatee again. And I don't know if I ever will.
And that's a decision for your safety?
I don't know. I don't know if it's for my safety so much anymore, but I've actually, the goatee itself, as I've grown older, the goatee itself shows a symbol of power and fierce and almost worth being afraid of. I have a friend who has worn a goatee, and he's a white American, and even he looks scary to me. He's one of my best friends. I mean, he doesn't wear it now, but when I first met him, it was scary. So, ironic, it's not just brown skin tone people. It's all males that have a goatee look intimidating. Whether the kind-hearted person on the earth, it still has a symbol of intimidation behind it. That's how I look at them.
Got it.
Perceive them.
And my sense in talking to you and just knowing you is that you generally feel very comfortable around people. I am wondering, though, if you ever, or maybe in certain circumstances, when around white folks, have that thought of like, okay, am I safe here? Am I going to be accepted here? Does that ever go through your mind, or is that something that you think about?
Sure, from time to time. Like I said, my wife is from a small town in Indiana. In small towns, not just Indiana, but across the board of the country, and of the world, I imagine. They, not that they know less and less, or not that they're less educated, but they may be not as diverse with other people.
Right.
This is not by anybody's fault. Not saying that.
Yeah, like
it's
less exposed. Yeah.
Say that again.
Less exposed.
Thank you for not as exposed as to other people. Not by their fault. It's just so if they don't see a me, so to say, like okay, so and if they've been exposed via TV or other ways of being exposed to it, as in we're not so good people, then it gives them false information. So there's sometimes there's times I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be out and about at night, even if it's with white people.
I hear you. It's like helped you in terms of working through, either your own prejudice or, just getting to know people and increase your own exposure?
Sure. I stated earlier that I was a flight attendant, and I would like to elaborate a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And that is that it exposes me to just about every single person on this earth. Flying into JFK International Airport is one of the most amazing places to fly into, because you can physically walk through the airport and almost via people, pre-COVID, touch every single country via person in the world, and it exposes just the diversity of who all of us are. It comes down to that we're flesh and bone and we all have DNA, but we're very different in the outside, but we're all humans. And it's just amazing, the diversity that we are, but how we're all very similar at the same time.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So, what made you decide to come on the podcast? I asked you to share, personal stories and talk about race and races. And not everybody wants to talk about that stuff. What made you decide to come on?
I think it's important that people share their fears. I think it's important for people to talk about whatever they want to talk about. It's important that people do listen, whether they agree or not, because everybody has a story and everybody has an experience. And I think this is a great tool, and it's an honest tool too. This is not made up. I'm not making up something that somebody else told me to say or anything. This is my story, my experiences, my life. And it's amazing what comes out of it. As in hearing my own stories, I'm still shaking from that one story that I said about September 11th.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just, it opens so many eyes as to how can one be a better person, whether you're on one side or the other. And not saying that one person's right or wrong or more right or wrong, but we can all learn from each other. I think that's my answer.
And is there anything else before we sign off that you'd like to share that's on your mind or in your heart?
I love being a father to 3 kids. The older 2 are now 11 and 14. And then out of nowhere, I became a father to a newborn. And that is a different experience, a completely different experience. And the best reason behind that it's so great is because of my wife, Danny. And she's an amazing partner, an amazing mother. And I could not, physically I could not have done it without her, but I could not have done it without her as well. She makes it that much easier and that much more calm. Life's amazing as is. All the things that are going on right now in 2020, it's like almost not worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's just one of those, I don't worry about it anyways, but now I don't worry about it even more. I know she got my back. So I like that, and I love that about her.
It's beautiful, Raju. You're a great family man. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been wonderful to talk about your experiences, and you're a wonderful guest. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.